Ariadne Eldir is the heiress of Duke Eldir. Despite her beauty, she was only a minor character who died before the beginning of the novel. But her fate changed the very moment she was born, which is why Ariadne is obliged to survive at any cost. The girl was thoughtfully peering out the window of her luxurious mansion when at the same moment a servant called her when it was time for her to go on her way. Ariadne, accompanied by a servant, walked along a corridor strewn with royal wealth and splendor. In appearance, she was silent and obedient, but in fact she was turning over in her head an escape plan for which she had an unprecedented chance. But suddenly her thoughts were interrupted by voices coming from one luxurious room, the door of which was slightly open. A young man and a bearded old man in expensive clothes were having a heated discussion about a girl with excellent magical abilities who died. The younger man says that they had love and that she died at the hands of monsters. But Arya hears a cry from the old man that he was obliged to save the girl at any cost. Continuing to tearfully deny his guilt, the young man admits that his beloved once said that if she dies, she is not worthy to be a holy virgin. The man deeply despairs and says that he will never forgive himself. But the old man still remains disgusted with him. Suddenly, the maid slams this very room, to which Ariadne asks her if those two were talking about her mother. She, calmly taking the girl by the hand, waves her off, reminding her that the Duke is busy, because of which they will have to wait a little. Solon Garcia is the same bearded old man, the grandfather of the main character, who is a very talented magician who received the title of Great Magician of the Empire. Because of the girl's father, Ariadne's mother became pregnant early, which made the powerful magician hate him so much that he renounced his own daughter. Only after learning about her death did the old man return 8 years later. The girl noticed that Solon is the same as he was in the novel because he doubts his daughter's death. Dark memories came over the girl, causing her to nervously clutch the fabric of her dress in her hand. In them, her mother bursts into the room, frightenedly runs up to her daughter, and peers at her wrists, which were covered in scratches and bruises. Mom explains to Arya that she shouldn't study this way, to which the girl is surprised, because her father, on the contrary, forced her to study. Mom, with tears streaming from her eyes, promises Ariadne that she won't let her go through this anymore. She hugs her daughter and asks her for forgiveness. In the next memory, Arya, being in her father's arms, asks him where her mother is. Dad calmly replies that she has gone on a trip and adds that if she does her job well, he will tell her where she is. The girl, fired up by this opportunity, readily agrees, which brings sincere smiles from both. Emerging from the memories, Ariadne, with particular sadness on her face, concludes that she will endure all the difficulties no matter what the cost. Meanwhile, the waiting time has come to an end. The girl and her servant have the opportunity to enter. The grandfather wants to see his granddaughter. Walking into the room, Arya was still thinking about her ideal chance, which was reflected in her stiff and strict mood. But as soon as the girl's father introduced Arianda to her grandfather, that stiffness seemed to be blown away by the wind. The sweet blue-eyed girl appeared before the men, lighting up her face with a smile. Dad wanted to adequately introduce his daughter, telling her age, which was 7 years old, but Solon interrupted him because he already knows. In a short silence, the old magician frowned at the girl, looking at her heavenly-colored eyes and blonde hair, which was her father's copy. Ariadne bowed elegantly before her grandfather, and, as it turned out, read his thoughts. He thinks that she is not like her mother, which makes him very angry. Solon waved his hand and ordered his granddaughter to come closer to get a good look. But then the young heroine remembers that it was at this moment in the novel that she got scared and rushed into her dad's arms. Because little children can feel when people don't like them, and when they don't, because according to the novel, her grandfather hated her. Perhaps now the main character would do the same, but she knows the plot of the novel. The father wanted to reason with his daughter's behavior, but at the last moment, she slipped out from under his hand. Plucking up courage before this very chance, the girl grabs the great magician's cloak. Solon, who did not expect such harshness, raised his hand up as if about to throw the child away. But Arya desperately begs her grandfather to take her with him. She believes that even though he hates her, she will be much better with him than with her father. The girl still clings to her grandfather in her thoughts. She begs him to take her away from her father. The girl's father gently touches her shoulder, reminding her that he has already explained how to behave in front of guests. Ariadne had already lost all hope of salvation when Dad started trying to take her away from her grandfather. However, at this moment, Grandfather Solon ordered his father to stop. He kindly asks his granddaughter if she really wants to go with him. The girl in whose heart hope has reappeared confirms everything with a smile, and the old man stroking Arya on the head decides that she can go with him. The grandfather and granddaughter held hands and were about to leave when the father began to argue again. Ariadne should not leave. She has a weak body, trouble might happen to her. Solon in turn claims that nothing bad will happen to her, and her desire is justified by the fact that they have not seen each other for a very long time. However, the father insists on his own. Having made sure that the old man is not going to give in to him, he decides to use force. By shouting, he forces his daughter to come back. After his order, no action followed. Solon Garcia, throwing a menacing look at him, reminded the boor with rude language which of the two held the title of Great Magician. Frightened by such rudeness, the father still continued his opera that he would report his grandfather for kidnapping, to which he did not care at all. The Great Magician and his grandson left the room listening to their father's screams behind them. Already in the carriage, the girl peers at her castle from which she gradually moves away. She doesn't believe it was so easy for her to escape. The Great Magician broke the silence between them, asking why his granddaughter was so frightened and clung to him. The girl herself recalls that, according to the novel, her grandfather hates her, and according to the script, this question should not have arisen. Ariadne is so surprised by her grandfather's tenderness that she begins to cry. Without knowing why she started crying, she tried to stop, but it didn't work. Solon notices his granddaughter's sad mood and hugs her, allowing her emotions to pour out. In her grandfather's arms, Arya sighed heavily, after which she burst into tears throughout the entire carriage. According to the novel, Ariadne Eldir, heir to the Duke of Eldir, could not become a saint despite her strength, and died at the age of 16. Arya learned this fate when she was 7 years old. Time is transported back to Eldir's father's castle. He, being in the office, examines some vials with an unknown liquid. He turns back and glances at his daughter, who is sitting nervously on a chair as if awaiting torture. She shudders, sweating 7 times. Her father notices this and tells her not to worry, he won't do anything dangerous. Duke Eldir bends over his daughter, burying his hand in her hair, causing Ariadne to cry out in a silent voice. A purple liquid pours out of a bottle inlaid with expensive stones. Arya is trying to stop her dad. She is scared and in pain. She closes her eyes and, as if in a dream, stops moving. Reality seemed to be shattered into fragments. Suddenly, Arya begins to gain consciousness, more like a stream of illusions. She remembers her name, the world in which she lives, but not all the puzzles fit. In addition, she also remembers some other life where there is no magic modern houses and smartphones. It dawns on her that she sees her past life, where she was an ordinary 28-year-old girl. But a sudden white light illuminated everything around, and Ariadne found herself in the same magical world in a luxurious library. She went to the shelf with books, took the first one she came across, and notices that she had already read this book about fairies in her past life. Next, she decides to look at another shelf with books, and also concludes that she read everything that is here in a past life. Ariadne Eldir realizes that she has entered her library of memories from a past life. She notices another shelf on which books from the same series are lined up. Taking out one of the parts of the novel, she opened the book and looked at the pages. Running her eyes over the letters, she notices something that she clearly did not expect to see there. Her name is Ariadne Eldir. She remembers the plot of a novel with her name which she had already read in a past life. Axel Valentine, the main character capable of returning to the past, tried to save the world from the invasion of demonic creatures. But despite all efforts, the world fell. It was filled with snakes that crawled across thousands of bones. The novel, according to the main character, ended meaninglessly. Having read words from the book about a certain Franz Eldir who had 2 children, the girl remembers that Ariadne Eldir did not live long. This saddens her, and she just has to accept that she is the Ariadne of this world. The girl reads a paragraph about Franz and learns that his biological daughter, Ariadne Eldir, died at the age of 16, and he had to appoint his second child, his adopted daughter, Helen Eldir, as heir. Everyone considered Helen a genius, but she used the wrong power that belonged to her. She used the Holy Maiden technique to heal the soul, and only thanks to the artifacts that the Duke made, she was able to become the mistress of spirits. The last lines about the technique of the Holy Maiden and artifacts greatly interested the girl she has taken into account in the book even more carefully. Arya finds out that she is hardly mentioned in the novel, and that now it is she who plays this role. With these thoughts, the girl notices her hand full of scratches. Arya begins to cry. It hurts her to realize that she ended up at such a young age. In the background, the girl remembers that torture with her father, and thanks to the past life that she saw in a dream, it dawns on her that such a father's love is not normal. Such memories touched a delicate chord in the main character. Her tears fell in drops onto the pages of the book. Peering at the scratches on her hand, she cannot understand how someone could do such a terrible thing to their own daughter. But suddenly she remembers one more detail, namely Dad once told her that Mom supposedly went on a trip. This seriously scares her, because she realizes that in fact her father simply killed her mother, which means that if he killed her, he could kill his own daughter. The girl's courage takes over. Deciding that her father is very dangerous, she swears to herself that she will find out the truth and change the ending of this novel at any cost. Time returns to where the little granddaughter is crying in her grandfather's arms. The old man orders the guides to go faster, and the carriage drives up to an expensive castle with an amazing garden and a fountain dusted with snow. In one of the rooms of the castle, there were two people. An expensively dressed man sitting at an office desk, and his servant standing next to him with papers. The latter notices an arriving carriage with the great magician in the window, which he notifies his master about. He notices that the magician returned earlier than he expected. While sorting through papers at the table, the gentleman complains that he himself is personally investigating the death of his daughter Gloria, although she is already being investigated. The servant in turn reports another piece of news. The magician Salon did not come alone. The gentleman wanted to ask him again, but everything was interrupted by a sharp cry like his father calling out to his son because his granddaughter was about to die. The master at first did not believe the father's words about his granddaughter, so the servant explained to him that Solon has a single heir, Ariadne Eldir. The son of the great magician refuses to believe that his father brought his granddaughter with him because he doesn't need anyone but him. But suddenly he begins to blame himself that the father forcibly took his daughter away from her father, as a result of which he went completely crazy. The magician's son immediately gets up from his chair, throws his cloak on his back, and hurries to his father. The girl, meanwhile, gains consciousness in a room that is completely unfamiliar to her, which at first greatly surprises her. She realizes that she passed out in the carriage. Trying to remember how long she slept, she rises from the bed. One of the servants comes into the room with a towel in her hands and a basket in her hands. She is glad that the lady woke up. Ariadne, due to her condition, does not pay attention to her. Instead, she tries to get out of bed, but she fails and falls. But the clever servant holds her back, reminding her that she shouldn't overwork herself too much now. She puts Arya back on the bed, covers her, and offers to light a fire so she doesn't catch a cold. But the girl doesn't seem to hear her words. She looks at her with bewitching eyes, wants to say something. The servant, still smiling, asks her again, thinking that the little lady needs something. At this moment, the girl realizes that no one has ever smiled so friendly at her because the Duke's servants don't even look her in the eye. Breaking her silence, the lady asks the servant what her name is, to which she, with a prominent blush on her cheeks, replies that her name is Lucy. The girl is once again surprised by the kindness towards her, from which a thoughtful Lucy is simply heard from her lips. To which the servant instantly responds with a blinding smile. Ariadne also begins to rejoice that at least someone is smiling at her. Lucy, noticing her mistress's smile, is glad that she feels in good health and admits that she was worried about her. But the smile on the girl's face disappeared in an instant when she realized that she didn't remember how long she had slept. It is at this moment that the son of the great magician bursts into the room and shouts, asking if Ariadne has woken up. He was so interested in his question that he did not notice the doctor who, cursing, was trying to squeeze into the room. The magician's son, noticing his embittered mood, sarcastically lets the doctor pass, causing him to stumble. Finding himself in the room in front of the lady, the doctor first decides to introduce himself, smiling politely and adjusting his glasses. But the girl was not happy about him. She recognizes the doctor's coat and remembers that she had already seen it on another person who served her father. These memories make Arya shake as if in the cold. With fear, she grabs the collar of Lucy's servant, but she says that everything is fine. It's just a doctor. The doctor notices the primal fear of the girl, who terribly does not want him to even come close to her. The girl cannot calm down. Despite Lucy's support, Arya understands that if she is sick, her father will not teach lessons. But the doctor decides to calmly introduce himself. He is the Weaver family doctor, Jalen Brown, but Arya can just call him Jalen. The girl's tension does not subside. Hearing the family's name, she realizes that she is in the Weaver house. She also says her name the same way. The doctor says that he is very glad to meet you and asks if he can examine the young lady. Having calmed down a little, the girl asks Jalen how long she slept, to which he says that more than 10 days have passed. The doctor reminds that it is not advisable for Ariadne to move now, but she did not listen to him. She thought about her father, who was probably already worried about her. Arya doesn't stop feeling nervous, but she still raises her left hand for the doctor. He clarifies whether she is right-handed. The girl agrees, after which the doctor begins the examination, promising to handle it quickly. Already leaving the master's choir, the doctor asks his son Solon if he noticed Ariadne's fear, to which he thought that it was simply due to overwork. He also mentions that the granddaughter of the great magician hated doctors as a child. But Jalen suspects something is wrong, because her fear was not about taking the medicine or the treatment process, but something more. The doctor is sure that Ariadne has other injuries, because being right-handed, she reflexively stretched out her left one, which means she never showed her right one to the doctors. The doctor mentions the girl's scratched arm, which they found when she arrived at the palace, and concludes that she has learned to hide her injuries. Ariadne's uncle asks who dared to inflict such wounds, to which Jalen gives the obvious answer. Without the knowledge of the Duke, it is impossible to injure Arya all over her body and cause intestinal diseases. The doctor's next guesses sent shivers down his spine. Perhaps Ariadne Eldir was tortured. The doctor admits that he considered the marriage of the Duke and Duchess very happy, and that with such parents Arya would also be happy. There were rumors that the Duke doted on his wife and daughter, which apparently turned out to be completely wrong. Suddenly, Solon's son enters the room with the little mistress and asks Lucy to leave them alone. Watching the man escort the servant out of the room, the girl guessed that he was her uncle. The girl noticed his anger and suggested what would have happened if her mother, pregnant with her, had stayed with her family. But before Uncle Ernest Weaver had time to approach his niece, she tenderly asks for forgiveness for the concern and thanks for the warm welcome. But suddenly, Ernest frowned and said that she was acting too mature for her age. Arya, who did not expect this, began to worry greatly, as if she had gone too far and her uncle would want to send her home. She apologizes. The man sitting down next to his niece says that she has nothing to ask for forgiveness for, and vice versa, he should do it. The girl listens to Ernest's next words almost with her mouth open. He regrets that he did not know about her condition and promises that he will not give offense again. The uncle strokes his niece on the head. The girl is enchanted by the man's kindness. He adds that she can just call him uncle. Ernest further says that from now on, this is her room, and she can stay in it as long as she wants. In bewilderment, the girl asks again, to which he apologizes that the room is prepared too simply for such a chic guest. But then the girl says the opposite. She likes everything very much. Her last room was much smaller and had no windows. His daughter's last words made Ernest think. In the background, he also remembers his niece's flashy clothes, her countless wounds on her body. The man concludes that Ariadne had never lived the luxurious life of an ordinary princess before, which makes him angry with the Duke. At this moment, without noticing it, Ernest begins to show his spiritual power. This power sent a chill over the girl. She remembers that her uncle is an elementary knight, and this is what his power looks like. Ariadne read about it in a novel, but seeing and feeling such magic is completely different. The girl begins to freeze. She does not understand the reason for her uncle's thoughtfulness because it is in such a state that a knight's spiritual strength usually breaks out. Shaking his head, the uncle returned to the conversation with his niece. He's glad she likes the room. Ernest covers the girl with a blanket and says that she needs to lie down to get better. But Arya is in no hurry to pack up. She is tormented by the question she asked the man. Why doesn't he ask her anything? Ernest, with a smile on his face, replies that he does not want to stir up her bad memories and that she can tell about everything when she is ready. The girl looked after her uncle as he left and did not understand why everything was so simple, because in the novel, he and Sir Weaver were not indifferent either. She assumes that they are partial because of her blood and decides to first find out what family is. Remembering her father, Ariadne claims that family is an illusion where everyone will love you because of blood ties. The girl falls into sadness because she realizes that the same thing is happening in her past life and in this one. And no matter how much she suffers, the Duke will not give up on her. Next, the girl remembers the Glomus elixir, which can cleanse the body and make anyone an elementalist. The catch is that you can't get it without Ariadne. That's why the Duke needs his daughter so much. Going to bed, the girl understands that she needs to rely only on herself. Putting aside sympathy and conscience, Arya falls asleep. Dreams take Ariadne to the library where one little girl is reading among stacks of books. Suddenly noticing Arya, she extends her hand and smiling brightly invites her to follow her. Arya and this girl surrounded by books are greeted like old acquaintances. The unperturbed Ariadne asks her friend how long she has been waiting for her. She in turn, not seeing a smile on the lady's face, asks if she is sick and if the last lesson was difficult for her. Arya, chuckling, replies that if she were sick, she would not have come to this library. The girl who is so happy about the appearance of the Duke's daughter is the guardian spirit of the library. Her name is Pi. Arya suggests that Pi was born with the library. She could read but could not speak. But thanks to the lessons the princess gave her, she learned to pronounce some words. Ariadne also suggests that she took all of her memories from her past life, and since she didn't have a name, the girl came up with her own using the number pi. Arya admits that her body endured unbearable pain during special classes, but she was able to hold out thanks to Pi, who was always glad to see her. Patting her friend on the head, the princess asks if she took good care of the things she gave her. Pi says that she hid them well, after which, at Arya's request, she ran to get them. These things turned out to be 2 vials with yellow and red liquid, which end up in Ariadne's hands. Looking at the potions, Arya notices that the library is a reliable hiding place and was able to take away these bottles without a trace when she ran away from her father. Time passes. The girl in the company of Lucy listens to her consolation that she is glad about her recovery and the fact that she can have dinner with Sir. Next, the servant switches to the princess's appearance and apologizes, saying that she picked up too old, to which Arya says that everything is fine. The girl is spinning in front of the mirror with a dress that was most likely her mother's childhood dress, walking with a servant. Arya feels strange wearing her mother's dress and walking up the stairs that her mother used to run up when she was a child. She realizes that in both this and her past life, she lost her mother very early, which saddens her. Finally, Lucy brings the princess to Uncle Ernest, who, seeing his niece, became gloomier than a cloud. The man walked further, promising that he would hire a seamstress to sew new dresses. The girl was scared and thought that he didn't like the look of her mother's dress on her, and she herself, who didn't look a bit like her mother. But the reality turned out to be completely different. The uncle could barely hold back tears from the beauty of her dress and was greatly delighted with the way it suited her. Approaching the table, the uncle reflects that in fact the father spared even good clothes for his daughter and decides that he himself will give her the best. While wondering which fur would be best for her, Ernest notices his niece, who sits down at the other end of the table where her face is not even visible. He rudely orders Arya to move closer to him. The servants immediately carry out the order. The girl, who is wary because of her uncle's anger, moves closer and starts eating. Chewing her food, the girl thinks about how not to create trouble, and that in the future they will have to talk about something. Ernest, watching his niece, is delighted with how cute she can eat. Suddenly, the servant reminds the master to control himself and not tense up. The man relaxes and agrees with the servant. There is no need to overload Ariadne. He will protect her health at any cost, becoming like a hero to her. But Ernest was so immersed in his fantasies that the emotion on his face turned creepy and terrifying. This greatly frightened the girl, which the servant tries to correct by whispering the words to his uncle. Ariadne is distracted by another servant who, smiling tenderly at her, brings her a second dish. At this moment, the girl looks around and notices that absolutely all the servants are smiling at her. She compares them with the workers in her palace and realizes that only the Duke smiled at her there. Arya feels sad again. Remembering her past life, she realizes that no one sincerely smiled at her and no one favored her. The girl lost her appetite. She puts down the spoon, thinking that she doesn't want to go home and needs to make a deal quickly. With particular seriousness on her face, she turns to her uncle, saying that she has something to show him, and this is very important. But Ernest almost missed her words, worrying more about whether she had eaten well, and kindly wiped her lips with a napkin. The girl, with a dampened spirit, apologizes for not following the rules of etiquette properly. The man laughs in response. She has nothing to apologize for because she is 7, not 17, and this is normal. Arya, afraid that she is about to be thrown out of the palace, decides to act. She asks her uncle to call the great magician. When asked why, she says that she is going to tell what her father did to her. Ernest went to meet the girl. He asks the servant to call Grandfather Solon to him, but he politely reminds the master that the magician has not left the Western Tower for several days. Remembering the old man's stubbornness, Ernest sets a fake condition that if he doesn't show up right away, he will send Arya home. The servant went to carry out the assignment. After 5 minutes, Ernest's joke aroused such emotions in Solon that he bursts into the room, opening the door with his foot. The great magician grabs his son by the collar and threatens that he may die at his hands, to which Ernest does not even seem surprised. Suddenly, Solon notices Ariadne that she has been watching them all the time and cools down. The magician's son, taking advantage of his silence, decides to pour out his dissatisfaction on him with the fact that he is always hiding in his tower and does not see his granddaughter. Arya decides that Solon isn't visiting her because he's disgusted with her, so she apologizes and admits that she wants to tell him something. But before the great magician had time to feel sorry for Arya, he noticed a mysterious vial of liquid in her hand. The girl, who sat down opposite the men with 2 vials of liquids in her hands, says that she will now show them how to get rid of impurities. The moment Arya opened the vial of red liquid, the hands of the old man and his son instantly reached out to her, asking her not to do this. But she ignored them. With complete equanimity on her face, the princess poured the liquid onto her hand, causing her skin to turn red, as if from a burn. Solon and Ernest were horrified. The latter, with a sword in his hands, was already thinking that it would be better to cut off the girl's hand as soon as possible, so that the pollution would not infect the whole body. Suddenly, Arya, with the same calmness, says that there is nothing to worry about. She will not die. She pours the yellow liquid from another vial onto her hand, after which all the wounds on her skin are healed. You can see surprise on the men's faces. The girl adds that this is a special elixir that gets rid of impurities. Ultimately, Ariadne admits that this is the experiment that the Duke conducted on her. The grandfather rushed to look at the girl's palm, and Ernest asked his niece again because he couldn't believe it. The girl tells the truth, from which he drops the sword on the floor. Her father injected the essence into her, and then the elixir, and watched what was happening. Arya brings the scars on her arm as proof. In the background, Ernest recalls his conversation with the doctor, who had already accepted the possibility that she was infected with poison. The uncle realizes that if this really turns out to be the case, then Ariadne will not have long to live. From his niece, he learns that the Duke has been experimenting on her since she was 4 years old. At this age, he learned about her good compatibility with the elements. Arya gives the saddened grandfather a jar of elixir in exchange for saving her, and if he listens to her request, he promises to make a new one. Solon asks his granddaughter again, and she adds that this is like poison and no one but her can withstand it. The girl says that the manufacturing process is complicated, but she can do it if she has the right ingredients. Ariadne repeats the condition. They must protect her until she becomes an adult. He says that he does not want to return to Eldir. The men fell silent, feeling a burden of guilt for what Arya had to endure. The girl became worried when she heard silence in response. She decides to talk about the benefits in their direction if they leave her. Ernest takes the essence from Arya and asks if this is all the liquid she has. The girl does not understand the question and says that she can show again how it works. Ernest shouts out a categorical no because she experienced terrible things. She was in great pain. Ariadne does not understand the reason for their sad faces and expresses the understanding that they will have to make a difficult decision. To which the uncle says that she has nothing to worry about. He supports his niece but breaks off his words, after which he leaves the room. At this moment, Grandfather Solon, sitting down next to her, turns into a girl. He asks Ariadne if she has feelings of hatred towards him, which the princess denies. The great magician adds that he hates himself even because all the time he did not even suspect what was happening to his beloved granddaughter. The girl says that the grandfather is not guilty because he didn't know anything, to which he says that he should have guessed. At this time, Ernest is behind the door examining some papers with the butler. Solon says that he cannot consider himself a real grandfather if he did not know any news from his own granddaughter. Ariadne, meanwhile, recalls a novel in which her grandfather did not care about her, which is why she does not understand the sadness on his face. Ernest returns to the couple and shows the document, which is an official contract that he signed. The contract spells out clauses under which she can always count on the support of her uncle and grandfather and live in their palace. All she had to do was sign it. The girl notices the space left below and realizes that she needs to write her part of the obligations there. Ernest says that she doesn't have to write anything there, which Arya doesn't understand, because there will be no benefit for them from her. She reminds her uncle about the elixir which can bring them a lot of money. In response, Arya hears words that warm her heart very much. He has no use for the elixir, his goal is to become a real uncle for the girl. Ariadne leaves the room with the contract in her hands. There was no trace of her sadness left. Left alone, the great magician praises his son that thanks to the contract, Arya will now feel more confident. In response, Ernest asks his father if he noticed his granddaughter's joy of relief when she signed the contract. Sitting down opposite Solan, the son listens to the magician's memories of how Arya clung to him with a request in Eldia. The grandfather admits that he has never heard such a desperate plea addressed to him in his life, and regrets that he did not come earlier. His thoughts were interrupted by his son's words that he would prepare for an imminent battle. After asking him again, Ernest, whose face instantly darkened, promises to repay the Duke for all Ariadne's suffering. He goes on to say that he will quickly gather knights, and that the Eldir knights are nothing compared to their snow leopard knights. Suddenly, Solan calls out to Ernest in a stern voice. He wary listens to his father. It was only heard from the father that he did not want his son to get involved in politics, which puzzled Ernest. The great magician then asks who he is to him. He, perplexed, gives the most obvious answer: his father. But Solan says that this is not what he means, and as if with fire out of his mouth, he reminds that he is the former teacher of the court magician, the Grand Mage of the Magic Tower, and now a member of the consulate of the imperial family. The father arranges a whole exam for his son. When asked who will suffer more if the subjugation of the labyrinth stops, the empire answers. When asked where the weavers receive their main income, the son replies that from the kingdom of Durido. When asked where the Elder gold mines are located, he names one place, Garcia. To the next question, where is the source of the Luma River that feeds Eldir, Ernest calls Kazelas. And to the final question, what is his wife's name, the son, not understanding why, says Celiana Kazelas. Solan scolds his son and asks if he misunderstood his train of thought, to which he does not answer. While Ernest is digesting everything she told him, the grandfather concludes that he can only trust Celie. He promises to take care of Arya and begin an investigation. The son clarifies whether his father means an investigation into the experiments that were carried out on Ariadne. He confirms this and asks to check everything. The father also asks to find out about Gloria's accident. Ernest wants to make an assumption from which he plunges into memories of his sister. He remembers an accident that happened at a horse grave near the Duchy of Eldir last year. Gloria led the team to clean up the place. Her Knights of the Golden Horn should have easily completed the task. However, as soon as she entered, their first signs of contamination immediately appeared and she died. Ernest gloomily says that this is what everyone knows and asks if his father noticed anything strange. He assures that everything is clean, but this essence will be enough to test for poisons. Picking up an empty bottle from the floor, Solan says that its quantity does not matter. The symptoms appear immediately. Peering ominously into the container, the grandfather concludes that it was the Duke who could have quietly infected Gloria and killed her. Ernest in turn says that he himself is not sure, but it is worth checking the pollution process. Just about to leave the room, Solan remembers that he forgot to tell his son something. Turning again to Ernest, he sternly says that he forbids him to engage in politics, after which he leaves. Meanwhile, Ariadne is in her room and can't stop looking at her contract. She didn't even think that they would offer her such a thing, and even when it came to the elixir, they did not behave as she expected. The girl is happy that everything went well, and remembers how her grandfather and uncle behaved with her. She wonders if Solan and Ernest's kindness was truly sincere. Arya compares their warm glances to her mother's when she tried to save her from the study room. Sad, she hopes that one day she will be able to feel a real family. Some time passes. In the garden at the palace, red rose petals are flying that have grown there. Ariadne, being in her uncle's arms, says that she can walk, and he doesn't have to carry her. But Ernest doesn't think about letting her go and asks her to imagine that she's just on a horse. At first, Arya is alarmed by his joy because he is very rude to others, but then her uncle switches her thoughts to something else. They come to the greenhouse that Ernest's grandfather built for his grandmother. Walking along it, the man says that his grandmother bewitched it so that he could walk here as a child. And every time there was a snowstorm, they came here, and when spring came, they swam in the lake nearby. Suddenly, the girl decides to tell Ernest that they are being watched all the time by a magician who is hiding behind. He says that he knows about him and asks his niece not to pay attention to him, Solon, realizing that he had been noticed, decided to escape from the greenhouse before it was too late. Peering out the window into the raging snowstorm, Ariadne asks when it will end. Ernest, having picked a bud of a red rose, says that it will stop when spring comes. And he adds that with the onset of spring, the aunt and cousin of the main character will come to them. From the novel, the girl remembers her brother's name. Eric Weaver is a brilliant senior archmage and friend of Axel Valentine, the novel's protagonist. She also understands that this person is needed to change the end of the story because he often argued with the main character. She decides that she must gain his trust, so she needs to prepare the elixir quickly. The girl is so immersed in her thoughts that she does not notice the flower that Ernest pinned near her face. Deciding that the girl was frightened by the arrival of new people, her uncle promises her that they will really like her. Suddenly, an almost fantastic phenomenon attracted the attention and gaze of all the servants. Their previously very formidable master smiles as he walks down the corridor with his niece in his arms, who, however, asks to let her go. Uncle brings the baby to her room and reminds her to take care of her health and that she can always count on him. Suddenly, a servant calls out to Ernest, causing the old smile to instantly disappear from his face. He notifies the gentleman about a certain guest who has arrived at such a late time. The uncle tells his niece to stay in the room and promises to return soon. The girl was about to close the door but accidentally overheard what the two men were talking about. Ernest and the servant talked about a certain Eldir who came without warning. Hearing her last name, the girl panics, assuming that her father has come for her. Arya peers at the arriving carriage through the window. She can't believe that the Duke came for her so quickly, but she is encouraged by the signed contract. Thanks to him, the girl hopes that everything will be fine. Sir Weaver is kindly introduced to Rictus Belbartha, a girl who occupies a special position among the Knights of the Golden Horn. He says, with not much admiration on his face, that she is too modest for an elemental knight. The girl pays tribute to Ernest's powers of observation as the shield of the entire North. He is in no hurry to smile at Rictus and asks if she was tired on the way here. The girl, handing the man a letter from the Duke, answers the question and says that she was afraid of getting into trouble because of the blizzard. From the letter, Weaver learns not the best news. The girl's father sent servants, knights, and doctors from the palace to them to help the lady. Ernest crumpled the letter, threw it at the girl's feet, and said that there was no need for this. Rictus expresses regret and says that the Duke still ordered them not to leave the lady a single step. The girl asks about Arya's location, to which her uncle tells them not to worry and go back. However, she insists on her own. Ernest begins to feel uneasy about what is happening, and Rictus says that he is acting strange. She begins to suspect Sir Weaver of something wrong, as if there is a special reason why they are forbidden to see the girl. As a result, she suggests that Ernest is keeping the girl captive, which he categorically denies. Rictus wanted to ask him something else, but after he shouted about the end of the conversation, the Weaver Knights burst into the room. They grabbed a girl who was shouting out promises to Ernest about revenge for Ariadne. Sir, meanwhile, ordered to also seize all the elder people who remained outside and greet them properly according to Weaver traditions. Ariadne, meanwhile, has a wonderful time with Pi in the Library of Memories. She treated her friend to something sweet, which she really liked. Arya promises to bring more next time. Arya feels calm next to Pi. She was afraid when she heard that people from Eldir had come. While her friend is eating her fill, the little lady is looking in the book for information about Eric Weaver. She manages to find its first mention in the novel. She reads the text more carefully. At this moment, Pi suddenly grabs Ariadne by the hand and shouts that she is in danger. She needs to leave urgently. The princess asks if she sees what is happening outside the library, to which she says that she only feels it. By magical means, Pi forces Ariadne to return back to the real world. The girl wakes up on her bed. She is surprised that her friend can throw her out of space herself. Rising from the bed, Arya notices that it is already getting dark outside. She doesn't understand why no one woke her up for dinner. Ariadne decided to walk around the room replaying Pi's strange words about danger in her head. The sudden sight terrified her. The darkness outside the window was caused by the huge shadow of a giant eagle flying straight into her window. The window breaks and an imposing bird and its rider rush into the princess's room. Shielding herself from the fragments, the girl notices a familiar symbol on the rider's armor. She understands that this is the Knight of the Golden Horn, one of those who came for her, but it is not clear for what purpose. He gets off his mount and tells Arya that he will save her and bring her home. The girl begins to panic. She says that she does not want to return to Eldir Castle. He did not expect such an answer, and says that in this case he will take her by force, which scares Arya even more. A sudden magical lightning made the man pull his hand away from the princess. The great magician appeared in the room. He is furious that he dared to touch his beloved granddaughter. Arya hides behind her grandfather, and the knight, feeling the power of magic, says that he does not want to fight Solan. Instead, he democratically offers to give him the girl without a fight. Solan says that he still doesn't even understand what a powerful force he has and invites the guy to leave without losses and without a lady. However, the cunning knight says that he should not underestimate him either. Suddenly he throws up a bottle with that same red liquid, after which, with the help of magic, he breaks it in the air. The essence of impurities flowed like rain throughout the room. At the moment when the red drops did not even fall to the floor, the girl, realizing that the essence could not be stopped by ordinary magic, stood up to her grandfather. But Solan turned out to be smarter. He protected his granddaughter from the drops covering her with the sleeve of his cloak. Having advised the robber to read books with his heroic battles, the great magician decides to attack. The magical lightning hit the bull's eye. The knight, not expecting the blow, groaned in pain. But unexpectedly for Solan, the enemy, quickly riding his eagle, cowardly flies away. As soon as the danger has passed, Solan furiously asks his granddaughter a rhetorical question, whether she has any sense of fear at all. He yells at Arya for putting herself ahead of him without even thinking about her health. The girl tries to justify her actions. She would not have suffered from this, unlike the magician. But grandfather insists on his own. He says that Arya should never have protected him. Sitting down on his granddaughter's lap and hugging him warmly, Solan says that, on the contrary, he should do this. The great magician is unable to hold back his tears. He persuades Ariadne not to try to save him anymore and promises to punish him for such behavior. The girl does not seem to hear her words because she feels a rare feeling for herself, warmth in her grandfather's arms. Arya walks along the palace corridor in her grandfather's arms. Solan says that she has nothing to worry about and can rest assured in the strength of her nasty uncle. The magician tells Ariadne that they dealt with the guests from Elder in the best traditions of Weaver. Having inquired about these traditions, the girl learns their essence. Ernest crippled all the Duke's envoys except one, so that someone could bring the wounded home. Not expecting such a good turn of events, the girl asks her grandfather if everything will be fine, which he happily confirms. Arya remembers that in the novel it is written that the Eldir are a very powerful and rich family. She begins to worry about the consequences. She warns her grandfather that her dad will be very angry, which he doesn't care about at all. He decides to explain to his granddaughter, "The Eldir family is just a little richer, that's all." Walking further along the corridor, Arya remembers that Eric's father is rarely seen in the novel. She even imagined that the Weaver family was so strong. On their way, they meet Ernest, whom his grandfather immediately attacks with comments about how he could let these rats into the estate. Already tired of his son's stupidity, the magician says that he cannot wait for his wife, Celiana, to return. Ernest complains that he trusts her more than his son. Twisting his finger in front of him, Grandfather Solan asks his son if he ever defeated his wife. The great magician reminds Ernest that he fought her 289 times and always lost. His grandfather's words anger him. The man makes an excuse that this is all because of his character, and if he wants, he can easily defeat her. He reached out his hand to the girl, hoping to pet her, but Solan pulled it away. Ernest just wanted to take Arya into his arms, but his grandfather did not let him because he constantly walks with her. The grandfather reminds his granddaughter not to worry about them and says that children like her should not have such sad faces. Solan cheerfully throws Ariadne up, saying that she just needs to be a child. However, these words plunged the girl into dark memories where people said that she did not look like a child at all. She also remembers Ernest's words where he reminds her that she is only 7, not 17. Arya realizes that in the novel she is a child who is destined to die anyway. But now that she remembered her life, she has a small chance to live. Her reluctance to surrender to death gave birth to these memories, so she will not be able to be a simple child. You will need to tread carefully. Arya also reasons that she is still a child, and she will always need people's help and expect their sincerity. The girl admits that she sometimes hates herself for her constant vigilance. At this point, she decides to apologize to the men for not acting like a carefree child. But Ernest says that she has experienced things that are not childish at all, which is why she acts so maturely. He adds that her behavior is the fault of adults, and it is not her fault that her childhood was taken away from her. Solan supports his son. He says that they in no way blame her for this. The girl hears words that are surprising to her. The grandfather becomes sad when he sees that his granddaughter is coping with everything on her own. She asks her grandfather again, and he not only confirms, but also says that he considers Ariadne part of his family. At that moment, the words of her uncle and grandfather sounded so warm to her that she felt that she could be saved from her previous loneliness. Bursting with tears, the girl asks the men if she can really trust them and count on them. Hugging the little Princess Solan and Ernest give absolute consent to her question. The girl begins to cry even more when she realizes that she can live here forever and simply calls Solan grandfather. Choking in tears of joy, the girl finally calls the great magician grandfather. Ernest, hearing this, also wanted the girl to call him by his marital status. Solan wanted to play a joke on him and leave before the girl said this for him too. But at the last moment, when they had already begun to leave, the girl, through her tears, called him uncle. Meanwhile, things are going badly for Arya's father. He is furious that he couldn't get his daughter back. But he doesn't think of giving up. With a terrifying smile on his face, the Duke promises that he will definitely bring his daughter back. In the middle of a clear winter day, a cheerful Ariadne runs out into Ernest's yard, after which they hold hands. The uncle says that it is cold outside and she can wait inside, but the girl says that she wants to meet her aunt and brother with him. Suddenly, maids swoop down on Arya from the palace, either bringing her gloves or worrying about her reddened nose or offering the lady a hot water bottle. Lucy is worried about her lady catching a cold and tells Weaver that she needs to be watched over. Ernest, scratching his neck, saw his beautiful niece collected and decided that it was time to go. The servants, as if tearing them from their hearts, bitterly said goodbye to their princess. The girl thinks they worry too much. Suddenly, Ernest stops and asks Ariadne to also take a step back. At this moment, the uncle uses his magical power and after the word blizzard, after which a huge magical leopard appeared in front of them. The girl realizes that this is her uncle's contract animal, which should not be confused with an ordinary animal. Form-based magic. Wizards can sometimes form contracts with spirit animals. Such beasts are intelligent and use the power of a great spirit. Looking at this miracle, Ariadne wonders if she will ever meet a great spirit in her life. The girl remembered the great guardian spirit of the Weaver family, but at that moment her uncle called her over. Ernest sat the princess next to him on the leopard, and together they rushed to the gate. Approaching them, Ernest says that they will jump over them now and reminds the girl to hold on tight. In 2 movements, the leopard deftly climbed to the heights. Uncle is relieved that they made it on time. Looking a little closer, Arya notices an incomprehensible movement on the road in the distance. The girl recognizes him as the snow leopard knights who are riding home on various spiritual beasts. The guard shouted about the return of the conquering detachment, after which the gate door opened. The leopard jumped to the ground where Ernest meets his friend, Veronica Bronte, the knight of the snow leopard. He notices her unkempt appearance, and she admits that she has gotten herself into the thick of things again. The man makes a remark to her about the blood on the clothes that should have been washed off, to which Veronica replies that she forgot. Suddenly, she notices a child next to Ernest, and he says that she is his niece and that she should be careful with her words. Veronica is surprised because she didn't know that he had a niece. Ernest is surprised because he wrote about this in letters. Ariadne Eldir is frightened of Veronica, but she, without noticing this, reaches out to meet her, which Ernest forbids her to do. Suddenly, the love of his life, Celiana Kizalas, runs up to his uncle and asks if he misses her. Jumping off his leopard, Ernest rushed into the arms of his wife, which not everyone likes to see. They are noticed by Eric Weaver, the son of an uncle who is studying to become a magician. He expresses dissatisfaction that his parents exchange affection like newlyweds. His displeasure grew even greater when he saw that his parents were about to kiss. He says thank God that his parents did not reward him with a brother or sister, when suddenly he notices Ariadne that she is sitting on her father's leopard. Arya silently peers at Eric and notices that for his 16-year-old age, he looks younger than in the drawings in the novel. Veronica, noticing the girl's face, is touched by her, which Eric misunderstands. He asks his friend if Arya is cute only because she is small, which she confirms. Suddenly, Eric says that the princess is disgusting because her huge eyes make him feel like he is looking at a naked skull. Veronica returns his words like a boomerang. She says that he is not nice but nasty. Eric immediately began to prove the opposite to her and brag about himself, to which she still said the same thing as before. Ernest's son is indignant that she cannot say such things about her future count, to which Veronica says that if he becomes one, he will leave here. Her next words sounded like a bolt from the blue to Eric. He looks like a cow. But Veronica managed to gallop off on her horse before Eric could take revenge on her. He turns his attention to Arya. He doesn't like how she looks down on him. The girl became worried when Eric began to say that she had no right to sit on her father's snow leopard. He grabbed Ariadne roughly by the arm and tried to throw her off the magical animal. Ernest stops his son's impudent behavior in time, after which he falls behind the little lady. Eric observes a strange picture for himself. His father is caring for the hand of some girl unfamiliar to him. Noticing a scratch on Arya's hand, Ernest tells his wife that he will return to the palace first. Seliana decides to postpone her acquaintance with her husband's niece. Moving away with her uncle from Eric, who is being scolded by her mother, Arya thought about the fact that now he seems to her even more at ease than in the novel she thinks about talking to him. Sometime later, Arya, accompanied by a servant, walks down the corridor who reprimands Eric for his bad behavior with the princess. Suddenly, the girl remembers the girl knight Veronica and decides to ask Lucy about her. The servant told her that Veronica and Eric were the same age, and she became a knight at 14. She appeared in the courtyard 2 years ago. They say she is strong beyond her years. Arya compares Veronica with the main character of the novel, who became a knight at 12, and concludes that she is clearly a genius. However, the girl is tormented by one question. Why is Veronica not mentioned anywhere in the novel? She doesn't think she is like Ariadne from the novel, and assumes that she died at the beginning. Arya remembers the argument between Veronica and Eric when she was sitting astride a leopard. The girl remembers. In the novel, every time Eric got drunk, he muttered words from this argument. Based on these factors, Ariadne makes the assumption that Veronica is his deceased lover. For a long time, labyrinths populated by monsters appeared everywhere, but people did not give up and continued to fight. Only one labyrinth, which appeared several decades ago, changed everything. It completely erased the Great Empire. Axel Valentine is a ray of hope. He was able to survive in the labyrinth and set himself the goal of destroying it. He created his own squad for this mission, which should include 5 people: a warlock, a mage, a priest, a witch, and an elementary knight. Almost nothing has been written about the roles of the priest and the knight, as well as about Veronica, but Arya is sure that she is the talent who will take the place of the knight, and decides to find out more about her. The princess left her thoughts when Lucy led her to a room and told her to go inside. In it, Ariadne meets her aunt Seliana Kizelas, who is very happy to meet her. Seliana laughed as the duke's daughter bowed before her, calling her madame and telling her that she could just call her aunt. The girl admits that she did not receive the letter from her husband because it got lost on the way, but she still learned her niece's story. She praises Arya for her bravery, as even the most trained knights could not have gotten that far. The aunt's next words pleasantly surprised the princess. Seliana says that she looks like a warrior. What is the girl asking in bewilderment? The aunt adds that warriors do not always carry weapons, but a person is considered a warrior when he fights for victory. Ernest believes that Arya is as fragile as steel, but Seliana, on the contrary, says that unprecedented power is hidden in her body and concludes that her niece is a very strong child. Weaver's wife remembers her son and falls into pity that he is not as good as Ariadne. Unexpectedly, Seliana hands the girl a small gift since it was her birthday recently. Inside the box, Arya discovers a small magic lamp. Aunt asks if she already had one, but Seliana did not expect to hear a negative answer from her niece. Watching the cheerful Arya, the girl finds it strange that her parents have never given her a magic lamp, which is considered the norm in childhood. Seliana helps her niece place her first magic lamp around her neck. Next, patting the girl on the head, she praises her good work and how far she has come. The aunt says that soon the main character will get to know her grandfather and uncle. Better they often go to her for advice, which now she can do too. Arya asks her if she will really help her, which she confirms, and says that it is their little secret. Some time passed. Arya walks through the garden thinking about her aunt. She is glad that she was able to please her. Looking at the jar of elixir in her hand, the girl concludes that her relatives are good people, and thanks to her grandfather, she was able to finish the elixir. She quickly decides to test it, looking at the flowers in pots. Arya thinks about the meaning of being reborn as a child. The girl considers herself cute, but too much like the Duke. She finds it absurd that the world of the novel she read is real. Arya also wonders about the identity of the novel's author. Ariadne decides to shake her head and stop filling her head with all sorts of nonsense. The girl stops to begin her search to use the elixir. She needs something small. She finds what she was looking for. Her eye falls on a dried plant in a pot. Arya approached them, and opening a vial of liquid recognized dying plants. Daffodils. The princess pours the magic liquid onto the plant and watches what happens. Suddenly, the dying daffodils instantly came to life and blossomed, which made the girl very happy. But Eric, who suddenly appeared behind him, displeasedly asked what the lady was doing. This made the girl turn around. Ariadne did not expect to meet him here because she thought that he was in training. Despite this, she bowed warmly, calling him brother. But he couldn't accept the girl's treatment in such a way, even despite the fact that his father told him who Arya was to him. Eric states that even if she is his cousin, she does not dare pretend that they are close. The girl does not understand his disrespectful behavior towards the child, which is what she asks him about. However, Eric decides not to answer the question and simply drive the baby out of the garden, because this is not a place for games. Ariadne's next words interested him greatly. She says that her grandfather allowed her to walk here. Eric's head was filled with bad guesses, after which he furiously asks the girl if she is stealing the secrets of magic from the great magician. Ariadne calmly denies her guilt, while he continues to accuse her of stealing her grandfather's secret techniques. In her thoughts, Arya confirms the words from the novel that becoming a knight is difficult. She doesn't like Eric's behavior, but she still remains polite to him. She decides to make a remark to Mr. Weaver so that he would be more polite with the Duke's heiress. Eric fell silent when he realized that Arya, although younger, was higher in caste. The girl meanwhile tormented him with questions about his ill-mannered behavior. Ultimately, his patience ran out. He shouted and asked Arya to stop bullying, which caused her to grin with satisfaction. Seething with anger, Eric scares the girl that he will tell her father about her behavior. To which the girl repeats that she did not come here for magic and not to become an elementary knight. In the end, Ariadne says that she came here for the sake of an experiment and leaves Eric alone with a lot of questions about this. He shouted to the lady to come back and tell about a certain experiment, but at that moment he noticed blooming daffodils that had previously not been alive. Left alone, the girl begins to feel not very well because she moved too much today. Suddenly, Eric catches up with her and grabs her by the shoulder, asking what she did with the daffodils. In bewilderment, Ariadne turns her head towards him, where he notices her nose bleeding and gets scared. The girl, wiping off the blood, says that she is relatively fine, and it is not his fault. Arya wanted to say something else but fell unconscious to the ground where Eric caught her. Mr. Weaver notices the girl's elevated temperature and is horrified at the thought that she might now die. The princess regains consciousness in the library, where Pai lays her down on the sofa and urges her to rest. Arya asks her friend if she forcibly dragged her into the library, to which she replies that she only called her, she is surprised at her abilities. The girl wanted to ask how she did it, but she didn't have time because she was very tired and fell asleep. Ariadne wakes up in her room surrounded by her family. Ernest cannot hold back his tears because his niece has regained consciousness. The doctor thanks the girl with the cross around her neck for her work and asks if he can approach the princess. She agrees. Ernest is taken away from the girl, and the doctor approaches the girl instead. After examining her arm, the doctor says that she is almost recovered. The doctor adds that Arya can improve her health by doing sports, but the girl does not notice him because she feels more light in her body. Ernest Weaver hugs the girl with the cross from the bottom of his heart and thanks her for her help. The girl says that this is all nonsense, and everything turned out thanks to the gift of the gods. At this moment, the smart Arya notices the yellow eyes of that girl and remembers that all priests have yellow eyes. Looking at the yellow-eyed woman and her uncle leaving the girl, remembers that all the eyes of all possessors of divine power turn yellow with age. Celiana turns to Ariadne. She asks her niece if she feels confused, to which she agrees. The aunt goes on to say that she was unconscious for 2 days and then asks Arya if she is hungry. Suddenly, the princess also answers this question with consent, which made Celiana smile, and the servants hurried to set the table. The rosy atmosphere is interrupted by the doctor, who wants to tell Ariadne something very important. Having captured the princess's attention, the doctor voices his assumption. It seems to him that the girl has lost the feeling of pain. For Arya, he explains that what is unbearable for ordinary people is like a mosquito bite for her. The girl asked if this was good, to which the doctor replied that it was not. Although she doesn't feel pain, her body still suffers. The doctor reminds her of the time when Mr. Eric wounded the princess, but she did not feel anything despite the fact that the wound was bleeding. He also recalls a case where a lady should have rested before a nosebleed, but she did not feel the need. The girl's pain warns of danger, but she doesn't feel it, which is very bad. As a result, the doctor recommends that Ariadne always monitor the condition of her body. The lady agrees, after which the man adds that she should feel better thanks to divine power. The girl, having heard the good news, asks if she can now walk anywhere, to which she hears a positive answer. The doctor says goodbye to the patient, and the aunt, patting Arya on the head, congratulates her on a speedy recovery. It's time for breakfast. Celiana, with a bowl of soup in her hands, says that her son will think about his behavior. She spoon-feeds the princess and promises to hire her nightly guards so that no one can offend her. The girl wanted to ask again, but suddenly her aunt invited Veronica Bronte into the room. Celiana says that Veronica, although young, is quite strong. Next, she asks the knight what she will do with Eric if he begins to offend Ariadne again. Veronica, scratching her head hesitantly, answers that she will not allow the girl to suffer because of him. To which Eric's mother says that she can beat him as much as she wants, just not break his bones, which shocked the little lady. The girl decides to ask about Eric. Was he scolded for fainting? Celiana replies that he immediately ran to the doctor and admitted that it was all his fault. Arya, who did not expect this from her cousin, says that in fact it is not his fault. Celiana says that Eric assumed she would say that, and yet he admitted his guilt, which makes her very happy. After a while, Arya goes about her business in her office. She prepares her homemade elixirs for her grandfather, uncle, and Eric. She still has 2 more jars of elixir, which she decides to give to Veronica and Pi. However, Arya thinks that this bottle will be useless for Pi, but she still decides to give her such a gift, which makes her very happy. The girl takes off the apron she was wearing and remembers that she asked Pi to find information about Veronica. She hopes that her friend will be able to find information. Sitting down on the chair, she also decides to ask Pi one day about how she can transport her to the library. With thoughts of her, Arya falls asleep, after which she is instantly transported to the Library of Memories. However, she does not find Pi next to her, who always, as soon as she appears, runs into her arms. Suddenly, Ariadne hears her voice coming from behind and calling her to her. Arriving at the sound, Arya is horrified to discover Pi, who wants to show her some of her finds as if coming out of another space. A library friend happily presents the lady with a book containing the information she was looking for. But the princess is interested in something else. She discovers another part of the library which is behind the glass. She asks Pi if she can go to that part, to which she says yes, and is surprised that her friend can't. Pi decides to demonstrate his abilities to the princess. She passes through the glass without any problems and ends up on the other side. Looking at the glass with interest, Ariadne asks why she didn't say before that she could do this. Pi climbs out of the glass and says that since she didn't ask, she didn't say. Arya decides that the library behind the wall is a stranger's memories and asks her friend if they are different from her library. To which Pi tells her that she is the only visitor here and there are no other people here except her. In an instant, the library keeper became sad from her loneliness, to which Arya said that she would try to come more often. But the next moment, Pi beams with joy and invites the princess to look at the book she found for her. Reading information about Veronica from the book, Ariadne's eye falls on the report about the battle in the La Matcha labyrinth. The girl remembers that this is a labyrinth located in Weaver's domain. She reads out the document. After the defeat, the defense was destroyed, as a result of which the monsters caused significant damage to the city. Veronica Bronte, at the age of 24, died protecting Eric Weaver from a monster called the Blood Hunter. The girl guesses that these events will happen in the future, but something doesn't add up. At this point, Pi says that she found all 10 volumes of the novel, but this name does not appear there, so she looked into other books. Arya feels something is wrong because her assistant found this not in the main novel, and we are talking about the present and not about future events. Since in the Library of Memories, Pi has access to her entire life without time limits, Arya assumes that she has access to any knowledge, which seems like a complete scam. Noticing the princess's silence, Pi became upset, saying that she had brought the wrong thing. But Arya slams the book shut and says everything is fine. The library keeper rejoices at this. Then Ariadne, with particular seriousness in her voice, asks her for one more request, to find information about the death of Gloria Weaver. Pi happily accepts a new assignment from the princess and rushes into her arms. Unexpectedly, Arya talks about her gift, which she hands to her friend. Pai is delighted when she notices her name on the ribbon of her first gift. She takes the ribbon off the can and asks Ariadne to tie it on her head, to which she at first brushes it off. But thanks to Pai's persistence, Arya still had to tie her hair with this ribbon, which she really liked. Time passes. Veronica accepts a gift from Arya containing a potion that she can use when she is injured, for which she thanks her. However, the girl is interested in one question. Why did they riding her contract beast climb onto the roof of the yard because the princess just wanted to meet her brother? Veronica admits that it's a little troublesome for her to go up the stairs to him. And the real reason was that she really wanted to hug Ariadne. Suddenly, the knight's horse breaks a tile with its hoof, which falls onto his brother's balcony. Noticing the fallen tiles, the girl was upset that Eric would now complain about her again. That's what they heard a moment later from an angry guy who asked Veronica to go up the stairs countless times. Eric asked his girlfriend to go down to the rooftops to him, but he was afraid of the horse which jumped right next to him. The girl calmly asks the young man why he is afraid since he himself asked to come down, but that Eric is complaining about her again because she scared him. Veronica doesn't pay attention to the guy lowering the little lady from the saddle. At one point, Eric notices Arya that she came to him with the knight and declares how she could bring this girl with her, calling her a brat. Suddenly, the girl grabs him by the collar because he does not dare call Ariadne Turtle. Because of her big eyes, Eric continues to say that this is a very suitable nickname for a little lady. Arya wanted to hush up the dispute and asked her guard to let her brother go, but she took it too literally and almost threw the offender over the balcony. The girl clarified that Veronica just needed to put him in his place, thanks to which he remained unhappy but unharmed. Next, Eric accepts a gift from Arya and clarifies whether this is the very experiment she was talking about. The princess says that he can ask his grandfather for details. Weaver notices his name on the ribbon, which makes him very happy. Suddenly, Arya decides to apologize to her brother, because it was not his fault that she fainted, and he took responsibility. The girl also assumes that Eric does not hate her, to which he again flared up with displeasure. Veronica again sharply grabbed the young man by the collar and reminded him to watch his words. Sir Eric loses his patience and leaves the girls. Arya thinks of him that he is strange, but not that bad. Veronica decides to cheer up the little lady and tells her not to be offended by him and that he doesn't deserve her gifts. But unexpectedly, Ariadne, with a radiant smile, says that she does not regret anything and believes that she did everything right. After a while, the princess spends time with her uncles and aunts at a delicious table in the greenhouse. They admire her elixir, which can heal all living things. Celiana decides to ask her niece if her potion can heal the polluted land once they clear the labyrinth. Ernest says that the elixir can only heal living things, but that his wife claims that soil can also be both living and dead. After Celiana's words, Weaver fell into thought, and Arya replied that she didn't know and needed to check it out. Arya herself recalls that the elixir on soil really works, and when she saw it in the book, the information was very accurate, which is quite strange. Looking at the jar of potion, Ernest says that if the elixir is effective, then it is worth making it in larger quantities. Suddenly, Arya urgently asks that they keep information about him a secret, otherwise there will be problems in relations with the temple. In response, the aunt asks the girl how then they can distribute the elixir. Ariadne comes up with her idea. They will start selling it on the black market, and when word gets out about it, they will publicly donate the recipe to the temple. A snow-white postal eagle flies to the window with a letter tied to its paw. The letter about the idea of distributing the elixir on the black market is read by the great magician. He asks the opinion of a luxuriously dressed young lady who is sitting next to him on the sofa and smoking tobacco. This beautiful lady's name is Rebecca Garcia. She is Solon's second child and the owner of the Garcia house. Hey, the princess idea sounds good. Several years ago, after the appearance of the Great Labyrinth, the grounds of the Garcia house disappeared. Rebecca had a hard time finding a new home for Garcia. She is the heiress of her father, who is not interested in money and power, and therefore currently has unimaginable wealth. The girl asks about the money, to which Solon reads Arya's words from the letter to her. She claims that if this elixir turns out to be useful to the world, then she is ready to give it away without any payment in return. Rebecca asks if Arya is going to give the potion recipe to the temple, to which her grandfather says that she just wants to make it. Arya thinks that by giving the recipe to the temple, we will gain its favor and increase our reputation. She will also produce it in large quantities. This will be a new recipe for the temple, which will take time to learn. They will easily take over the market. It is difficult to buy something on the black market, and the temple does not approve of it. Therefore, when they release the elixir for sale, it will be sold like hotcakes. Rebecca guesses that the donation will let everyone know that Arya created the recipe, and trade will go without competition, which will bring profit. Admired by the girl's genius, she asks her dad about her age, to which Solan is surprised why she doesn't know how old his granddaughter is. Rebecca snapped her finger and called out to Pothern, after which he obediently replied that Ariadne turned 8 this year. Hearing such a small number in response, the girl rushed to beg her dad to let her see her and make her his successor. Solan answered her with a categorical refusal, because Ariadne is the direct heir of the Duke of Eldir. Rebecca plopped back down on the couch in disappointment. She says there is no other choice, but she cannot give up the distribution of the elixir. The grandfather replies that it is not for them to decide, and he only came because she called him all decisions are made by Arya. The girl asks her grandfather about his confidence and says that someone should take responsibility for this. Solan admits that if Ariadne were a normal child, he would say the same thing. But her grandfather began to respect her when she demonstrated the abilities of the essence on herself in order to gain her protection. Rebecca says that this is not surprising because she is Gloria's daughter. Trying to escape from her father, she put all her determination into the moment when she poured the contaminated essence onto her hand. The girl jokes that if Ariadne falls in love, then everything will go nowhere, which displeases Solan. Suddenly, Rebecca says that Gloria contacted her shortly before her death, which surprises her father. Gloria gave her sister a note with the indicated place and date, which she asked to keep secret. Solan asks if she met with her, to which she says that the meeting did not take place. Rebecca waited for her all day at the appointed place, but Gloria never came. Later, she learned of her death. The father furiously asks his daughter why she didn't tell earlier, to which she replied that she was silent because of his doubts and conducted her own investigation. The following words plunged the great magician into nightmarish despair. The results of her investigations were all the same: an accident. Rebecca guesses that Gloria could not tolerate her husband's bullying. If this had been revealed, divorce would have been inevitable. She also recalls that Solan tried to persuade Gloria to get rid of the child while she had the chance, and there were rumors that the Duke was a womanizer. He saw his mistresses immediately after the wedding, but no one believed it. Tears seep into the great magician's eye. He admits that everything that happened was his fault. Rebecca says that she knew her father would act this way. That's why she didn't talk about the note Solan thanks her for telling her. The daughter asks her father to stop crying because he still needs to visit his beloved granddaughter. But Solan says that she will go to Arya without him, which raises questions from the girl, because he told her that he had finished his business in the capital. It turns out that this is not the case. The father hands his daughter a document. After reading it, Rebecca realizes that this is a certificate of custody of Ariadne. The girl thought that the Duke admitted that he tortured his daughter, because practically no evidence would challenge his right to paternity. Suddenly, Solan admits that he himself took the document from the Duke's house. Rebecca didn't expect her father to decide to steal the certificate, but he calmed her down because he took permission from the Emperor in exchange for teaching some members of the imperial family. Rebecca laughs at the Duke's insignificance and is surprised that her father's knowledge can be of such benefit. The girl cautiously argues that the situation is very serious and so far everything is fine, but no one knows what will happen next. Rebecca does not believe that Gloria's death was an accident and suspects the use of poison which leaves no trace. She suggests that it is for this reason that Arya wants to donate the elixir to the temple, because if everyone finds out about it, the truth will be revealed. Rebecca, getting up from the sofa, advised her dad to relax in the living room, while she herself went to visit her brother because she wanted to see the princess as soon as possible. The girl is surprised that a child under 10 years old can think in this way, so she decides to personally meet with the child who came up with such a plan. Once at the Weaver Palace, Rebecca is surprised by some words that the servant said to her. She was surprised that the group decided to go on a picnic with Arya.